One single test should never be the metric by which you judge yourself. Give yourself time, give yourself space, and slowly but steadily having some sort of outside hobby apart from just the preparation, which is the main thing, can really help.
Hello,
Right.
all. Welcome to Arjuna Group's show Success Tips from Topper Slips, in which we interview a student who has been a topper in competitive exams like IIT JEE, NEET, UPSC, or in fact GATE. I'm Abhishek, working currently with Broadcom India Research as a senior IC design engineer. I'm volunteering for the Arjuna Group in the mission of spreading the culture of excellence and ethics with the spirit of selfless service. Today we have our special guest, Mr. Arjun Bharat, who has secured All India rank 26 in IIT JEE 2017 and graduated from IIT Chennai in 2021 from computer science engineering. So, Arjun, hearty congratulations once again. All India
Thank you
rank
so much.
26 is like a wonder achievement. How do you feel about it?
The initial reaction was definitely excitement, but at the same time, I also realized it's an important indication of what the future expectations would be. So while there was definitely a lot of excitement, I tried to be as level-headed as possible about it, since this laid the foundation for a lot of important future work. So I would definitely say enjoyment, a feeling of satisfaction, since a lot of useful effort had come to, I would say, a pretty nice and impactful conclusion. So these were most of my feelings.
Oh wow, wonderful. So Arjun, like what is the topic that you have chose today?
The topic I have chosen to address today is what should a student do if he or she is getting slightly lower scores than expected in a test?
Like, why did you choose this topic?
Right. My main motivation to choose this topic primarily was because it was very relatable for me personally,
Mhm.
and in this competitive age of competitive examinations, contests, expectations, challenges, everything put together, students sometimes feel somewhat pressurized to increase their scores, and there is a sense of discouragement that often stems into the background when this feeling is continuously in the mind. And like I mentioned, my experience with this is rather personal, because in the first 6 months of my preparation, I had a similar feeling wherein I felt I was not hitting the desired mark that I had set for myself. And I had an eye opening experience when I had a chance to read Amal Sir's book, The Art of Concentration in the Age of Distractions, which explains very lucidly and clearly the four different angles to this problem and how it can be easily uh, surmounted through simple and relatable tips. And I believe that students are always looking for ways to optimize their test scores, as well as how to develop what we call a growth mindset, which is the ideal mindset to
Mhm.
thrive through challenges and enjoy yourself at the same time. And I believe that given all these various reasons and the burning desire for every student as to how to do this, I thought I would be lucky to share my insights on this topic today.
Great. So like tell me like how like what should a student do if one is getting low scores? Like what do you suggest?
Yes, this is a commonly asked question, but there are multiple answers to this question. So I would like to take maybe a couple of minutes and explain this part by part.
Sure.
So let's come to the first portion, which I think is the emotional response, which disturbs the student once this happens. Now, naturally, like we mentioned earlier, there is a lot of expectation. There is pressure, anxiety, fear, all these feelings, right? And this accumulates and together, let's say, sort of gives rise to an emotional response from a student, wherein they go through some sort of depression, self doubt, they question their own self worth, they feel unworthy, they feel that they are not able to contribute enough to this society in terms of how they are as students or whatever. And these are all very uh, a very wide set of negative thoughts which I can keep going on, but today we're here to take away the positives, so let's not do that. I think I've covered the general thought process that goes through somebody's mind. Now, the thing is,
Mhm.
this is exactly what somebody should not do to start with. And I understand that it's quite difficult. So the second part of the question is, we mentioned how we shouldn't be immediately negative in our response,
Mm.
but how, right? So then what we need to remember ultimately is every human being within themselves has an innate power to contribute to the goodness of the universe, what we call as self-worth, right? So what
Mm.
exactly is self-worth, and how does somebody really get to know what their self-worth is, right?
Mhm.
So this is one of the most important feelings, in my opinion, to achieve a quick positive mindset, to bounce back from any failure and take success as well as failure both in equal and controlled measure. So I think that a person's self-worth is inherently tied to his or her journey, the journey that they undergo to reach a particular milestone, not necessarily the fruit. And this is actually something which even the Bhagavad Gita also mentions, as do many other books of philosophy, say that what one picks up along the journey is probably what they will remember the longest. But what one
Mm.
achieves at the end of the journey, that is something which they will probably remember only for some time, not the longest. Right. And if you notice, even the exams that we write, the tests that we give, all of them are actually attempting to fundamentally assess one parameter. That parameter is what is the student's takeaway from the journey, not necessarily what the student is able to channel on that day of the exam. Now, although we are result oriented and
Mm.
we use the result as a metric to measure somebody's success or failure, right? The main thing to note here is it's the person's journey which makes them invaluable to this world. And one should try to attach one's self worth and self pride to the journey which they undergo rather than the fruits or the outcome of that journey, right? So this is
Mm.
another thing which helps a student reassure themselves, saying, maybe I did not get the most optimal score this time, but I know I have picked up some invaluable knowledge along this journey, and the next time I write an exam or the next time I have a chance to perform, I will take it head on and I will do my level best. Now, simply to summarize what I said across the last 2 minutes, there's this quote which is often mentioned, particularly in cricket, since cricket is a sport which the young boys and girls of today watch a lot, right? Form is temporary, but class is permanent. And I think no better example to this can be given than a great player Virat Kohli, because the moment Virat Kohli does not score one half century or one century in any one of his Test or T20 or ODI innings, there are a lot of questions raised about what Virat Kohli's contribution is to the team and whether why he's not able to channelize that high optimal level of performance. But what they forget is Virat Kohli is one of the fastest players to reach 10,000 runs. In fact, if I'm not wrong, the fastest. Someone should correct me if I've not got statistics right here. And he holds numerous other records as well. So when he
Correct.
has an impressive collection or accolade of an impressive list of accolades, should his self-worth not be tied to the journey he went through to get those accolades rather than just
Mm.
one single innings where he got out for a single digit score or a double digit score? So that's what students should probably keep in mind, is that one single test should never be the metric by which you judge yourself. Give yourself time, give yourself space, and slowly but steadily learn, grow, and appreciate the process, right? The last
Okay.
portion of this answer, which I would like to touch upon, is how or what exactly does luck mean, and how should one view luck when they feel that they have not been lucky in terms of their outcome? Because this is
Mm.
something which many people often say, right? A, B, or C got lucky, and that's why he or she is successful. Or I was not lucky today, and therefore I just about missed when I needed the
Mm.
spark the most. Right. So I would like to invoke a very uh, thoughtful and perfect example from Amal Sir's book, The Art of Concentration, which states that success is a union of our endeavor and God's favor. So, what
Mm.
exactly does that mean? Now, there is always a conflict in our mind between whether we chase short term goals or long term goals, and how short term goals usually lay the foundation to what is a long term goal. So, one person's long term goal might be to be successful in life in general, and they believe that competitive examinations are often one of the fastest ways because you are able to gain admission to a prestigious college and you have a good base for what should be a solid career from then. And while this is true, sometimes maybe we get a bit too lost in this process. And this thought process needs to be simplified. So that's when we start asking ourselves, what does luck mean and how much influence does luck actually have on my outcome? So, how I think someone should view luck especially when they feel they're losing out on it, is luck is basically the positivity of the universe which you have contributed to coming back to you at the right time. So you might have done someone a lot of good, or you might have done someone a good deed a long time back, and you probably may not remember, and it might have helped that person a lot more than they told you would help them. And that positivity which you have contributed to somebody else will one day definitely come back to you at a time when you expect it the least. And I've personally had this happen to me during some of my tests when I felt, oh no, maybe I did not cover this chapter in maths
Hmm.
sufficiently enough, or I had this unsolved question in my practice and I hope it doesn't come in the exam. But the beauty is, every time I felt that this thought was in my mind, I almost always got a set which I definitely could solve. And I think this means that luck definitely finds the right person at the right time, and you will be in the right place at the right time when luck finds you and gives you that extra push which you otherwise felt that you might miss. So,
Hmm.
this feeling of positivity coming back to us should inspire us to help others, even if we may not be as positive about ourselves. So if we
Hmm.
have some a not so good performance in a test, seek help. Seek help from your peers, from your teachers, from your friends. It could be academic or even emotional help, and that feeling of positive contribution from somebody else can motivate you to do more positivity with your own life, and that will eventually bring back the positivity back to you. So all this basically comes down to what is often spoken as the karma theory, right? So good
Hmm.
karma is what ultimately brings about good karma. You know, karma theory is something which many people find not so easy to understand, but the simplest way is it's the positivity which you give, which ultimately comes back to you. So, a very simple, practical example which I'd like to mention to reinforce this final point is that when we say velocity and displacement in physics, right, these are all
Hmm.
ultimately relative terms, because you could be moving with respect to some object, yet you could be completely at rest with respect to some other object. So if you're sitting in
Hmm.
a train, you're at rest with respect to the train, but you're in motion with respect to your surroundings. So
Correct.
what's the message we're trying to push here? Message is very simple. The displacement or the progress you make in the real world might be relative, because it's always benchmarked with somebody else. Nowadays,
Somebody else.
parents sometimes exert pressure saying your sibling or your cousin or your
Hmm.
neighbor's child is doing really well. What about you? Or this peer pressure also kicks in. My friends, my peers are doing very well. What about me? Simple idea is that while velocity might be relative, the kinetic energy is ultimately absolute, right? So this connects back easily to the previous point I mentioned. While your outcome might be temporarily measured only based on the fruits that you have obtained, your journey is what defines you, and that's your
Hmm.
energy. So, in the race to prove your progress to the world, do not forget your journey and use the journey to derive strength. So, your energy is an absolute factor. That is, your self worth, your self confidence is absolute, and only you decide how much it must be. And that should always be kept as high as possible by deriving motivation from your journey and your peak moments and the reasons for which you're fighting. Because you're fighting in this journey not just for your own self, but to ultimately to work towards a better life, right? That is one of the things you're also fighting for, and you're also making a positive contribution to the world, because tomorrow you might be a great scientist, or a great engineer, or a great personality who contributes positively to everyone, and that positivity comes back to you in the form of luck when you least expect it. You might feel that your peers are always ahead of you, but do not worry. On an absolute scale, are you making progress? On an absolute scale, are you taking
Hmm.
positive step towards your goal? Are you better than what you were last week or last month? So this
Hmm.
is the thought process which we must try to ultimately cultivate, because it is what will help us power through even our lowest times. And I think
Hmm.
that these set of 3 points, or these three principal areas, are what students can focus on whenever they have self doubt, or whenever they feel that they are not doing well enough, or whenever they feel that their performance is not optimal enough.
Wow. Thank you so much, Arjun. That was a fabulous answer. And the way you also quoted from the Art of Concentration, it felt like that. Oh yeah, this book. Don't you think it helps us to give us that necessary tools or tips to carry forward consistently, and where to focus? where not to focus, so that it helps the student to overall wholesome build themselves, and not to define themselves as per the words of others, like what is success and what is failure and all. Like they can
Yes,
develop themselves.
yes,
And
exactly.
in the process, you have wonderfully explained how uh, the goal is not just marks or the outcomes. It's bigger than that. Like how you are improving your life, how you are bettering your life of others, how you are adding positivity to the world as such. And that's a very important piece which we generally tend to forget. We just think, okay, it's my mark, so I should keep on mugging, or just keep on solving or whatever. But a very big chunk from our life we forget on how we can give positivity to others, and definitely it will come back.
Yes, that
Wow.
is the very essence of all of this. In fact, even my physics teacher used to just jokingly mention another point, which often reminds me of what we just spoke about, which is even if you feel you're not contributing as much in other fields, always remember that you are increasing the entropy of the universe, right? And this is a very, it might sound like a very simple and silly quote, but it's actually a lot
Mm,
more powerful than it sounds, because if you introspect a bit deeper, this is what is actually implied, right? The
mm,
fact that you're undertaking this journey itself is a positive
mm,
contribution to everybody, because even if you may not get the instant result you want, tomorrow
mm,
someone can draw inspiration from you and do
mm,
everything which you did in a better fashion. And that's how even humanity has progressed over time, right? You had generations of individuals come, try challenge the limits, leave behind valuable knowledge and experience, and then the next generation picks up from that and keeps moving on. So no matter what happens, by just undertaking this journey itself, a student is being brave, being
mm.
being passionate, contributing to the good of humanity in general, because tomorrow several people can draw inspiration from you on what choices to make and what decisions to accept. So that's something I just wanted to mention here as well.
Yeah, so true, Arjun. Okay, so like, tell me, like, how did you apply this strategy, like,
Right.
when you were a student?
Yes. Again, I before I start here, I'd just like to mention that the strategy which I'm mentioning here happened to work for me. And
Mm-hmm.
in this segment of life, in the aspect when it comes to preparation or studies, there is not necessarily a one size fits all approach, because what works for X may not work for Y. So I would just
Mm-hmm.
like to cite my specific examples here, and I'd also like to cite some generic preparation points which I think that might be more applicable, or that might be more relatable to a variety of students. So
Mm-hmm.
without further ado, I'll just get started here.
Sure.
So like I mentioned, I have a personal association with this topic, because I used to get very upset with my low scores, my not so optimal performance, and I've had some low moments as well when I used to often get involved in maybe unnecessary comparison with my peers beyond what were reasonable limits, and sometimes feel dejected in the entire process. But what exactly worked for me here? So the first thing is learning from your mistakes, right? Your mistakes might be one portion of your journey, but they do not define your journey. So the first thing is identify your mistakes and take positive steps towards correcting them. Now, how do we go about doing this? So I felt that the first thing which I did was to go through all the errors that I made by discussing with a friend or a teacher, and check what kind of mistakes I was making, doing some sort of pattern finding, basically saying, did this mistake happen because I was not prepared enough? Did I read the question incorrectly? Did I make a calculation mistake in the final step? Or did I apply the wrong formula? Did I assume the wrong set of conditions, etc., etc.? Right? So I would suggest that test analysis is something which everybody can definitely work towards. And test analysis itself is a rather detailed topic, so I do not want to go into very fine details there. But the essence of this point is that students may create what I call a mistake workbook, where you categorize and classify your mistakes into various different sections based on why they happen. You can label your mistake codes as A1, A2, A1 standing for a calculation mistake, A2 standing for
Mm,
a reading mistake, and so on, and see where most of your mistakes occur. Once you find that out, you know how you can strengthen your foundation so that the overall building is a lot stronger. Then the second thing is, how do you go about building your self confidence, especially when you feel that there is one particular chapter where you're repeatedly making errors, right? So, what I used to do was I used to work out 10 or 20 different problems from the same chapter the very same day I found out that I made the mistake. So that this way, the next time I faced a similar question from the same chapter, I would be a bit more prepared. I would feel more familiar, and familiarity is actually a very, very positive thing for the mind, because when something is familiar, you're always willing to take risks and go the extra mile. So I think familiarizing yourself with the chapter which you do not know the best is a good way to go about. This is something which I have personally used a lot and it's worked for me. And another thing is that whenever I had a new concept itself that I did not know, I would go over the same concept again and again, spend time reading it often within the same day, and then accumulating that learning over a week or so by taking help
Okay.
from my teachers, from my peers, and anybody else. And then this helped me increase the confidence in that particular area. And another area which students can also consider here is what's called the Feynman technique. Richard Feynman was a very famous scientist, a physicist rather, as we all know. And Feynman's technique basically states that to enhance your knowledge in a particular area, teach that particular concept to somebody who knows little or nothing about it. Because this way, you are exploring multiple perspectives and multiple viewpoints for the same thing, because someone who has no idea about the subject might ask you why things are the way they are, and this might make you think further and come up with multiple explanations for the same particular concept, or multiple
Mm,
viewpoints to visualize the same concept, right? So for a given calculus problem, there might be multiple ways to solve it. One might be just substitution, one might be using a standard formula or a reduction. There are so many other ways to go about it, right? So just like how
mhm,
we have multiple solutions to the same problem, multiple perspectives to the same concept by explaining it to somebody else would really enhance the students' learning. And this is something which helped me a lot. And this talks about the test analysis and the self confidence portion. How about how to stay calm while taking an exam itself? Because there is a lot of continuous anxiety and time pressure in someone's mind, saying, I have to solve so and so questions before so and so time limit, and I don't have much time left, etc., etc. And this thought itself might exert more psychological pressure than necessary and might cause some errors to creep in without ourselves realizing.
mm,
So, how does someone stay calm when they take a test? So, personally, for myself, I found that chanting mantras, in my case, specifically the Vishnu Sahasranama, was very useful as well as relaxing in terms of helping me keep my mind focused without letting it wander elsewhere.
mm,
And another thing is that I used to also say the Gayatri mantra now and then, maybe not while writing an exam, but at least when I was traveling to my classroom or whenever I was free, I felt that chanting the Gayatri mantra infused me with a lot of positive energy. And
mm,
this is something which helped me channelize good performance when it mattered the most. Now, I understand that not everyone may be able to say a mantra with complete focus and perfect pronunciation when they are in the middle of another exhausting exercise of writing a test. So I totally understand that this is not very easily possible for everybody, and or that other people might have more effective techniques. So one thing which I'd like to mention is the concept of semi-positive reassurance. So what exactly is that, right? So when I say a semi-positive reassurance, I mean something which goes like, I will try my best. I can
mm,
do it. So what does this basically mean? This basically means that I am assuring myself and motivating myself towards a positive goal in a positive fashion. But at the same time, I'm not getting too overconfident, or
mm,
because that might exert again too much pressure. And at the same time, neither am I getting too diffident and passive, because if I am too negative, then that way I might feel like I have nothing to fight for and I won't have the perseverance to go through the process. So I think semi positivity is the best way. And the reason I say this is because the human mind works in very mysterious ways. So I can illustrate this no better through a simple example with Abhishek right here. So Abhishek, imagine if I told you to think, to not think of an elephant. What's the first thing you actually thought about? It must have been an
Definitely, it is
elephant.
elephant.
And everyone must be smiling and wondering why it is this way. And even those of you who are trying the exercise right now probably also thought of an elephant. And the reason is your mind works this way. You have, when someone says do not do something, you have to imagine what the something is. And then you have to realize how to negate that thought process in entirety. So I probably
Mm,
imagine what an elephant looks like. It's tall, it has four legs, etc., etc. And then I said, okay, this is everything I should not imagine henceforth. Similarly, if you keep telling yourself do not make a mistake, do not make a mistake, which is some sort of negative reassurance, the first thing you'll have to do is to make a mistake to realize what making a mistake is. And then that way
mm,
you say, okay, now this is what I should not be doing, and therefore I will not do this again. But by this time you've already made a mistake. And that's why semi positive reassurance, that is saying I can do it or I will do it, this kind of reassurance is often the best way, because it's simple, it doesn't exert too much pressure, and it doesn't also influence you with any unnecessary negativity, which might happen if you use a negative form of reinforcement, like I should not do this, I should not do that. So this is
mm,
something which I would suggest students can try, because I have found this also quite useful, and I've been giving tests at times. But for me, like I said, chanting mantras is what worked the most. And the last thing I probably want to mention is having some sort of outside hobby apart from just the preparation, which is the main thing, can really help de-stress your mind often about low performance. So personally, I enjoy playing sports a lot, and I feel that physical activity is also essential in a fair amount of measure. And apart from that, I believe that it can really help take your mind off a particular topic, or it might help you find new ideas, because students often talk about getting ideas in the shower, or we say, I had the shower thought that I could solve this question, or something like that, right?
mm.
The essence is that a different process altogether in your mind helps you look at things differently and find simple solutions. And I have often found that going back to a different activity as a de-stressing hobby and coming back to my studies helped me often find answers. So I would say, Amal sir has mentioned a very exhaustive set of 16 hobbies a student can do in the Art of Concentration book. And this is, I found that list to be very exhaustive as well as very generic at the same time, because there are no precise prescriptions, but there is a lot of it which also tells a student on what he or she can focus about and think about apart from studies, which is the main goal. So I would suggest that the last thing I would say is developing an outside hobby is definitely a very good thing to also have, because it helps you focus on the larger picture as a whole from multiple perspectives. So yeah, these were some of the strategies I applied. I hope everyone is able to take the essence of what I said rather than just trying to mimic the exact thing, because that may or may not work.
Correct. Yeah. Like in fact, like the way you spoke, although you said it is more specific to your case, but then more or less, I would say it's largely generic. Just to add to whatever you thought, even in our offices, like this art of concentration book or the tips that we are here learning is not just applicable for students. Of course, it is mostly relevant for the students, but this help even for a professional life, isn't it? Like
Yes, definitely.
recently, what I felt was like I had to crack a code in the office. Initially, I was getting thoughts where I had to write hundreds of lines to solve it, but then I thought, no, more the number of lines you write, more the mistakes, right? So to finally arrive to a one single line code solution, actually all these tips like concentration or the chanting or having a hobby, all of this really helped. And let me tell you, I cracked that code not while a shower, but while playing badminton. So it feels right there, the hobbies and all of these things, whatever you have spoken, they're very very valuable, my dear students. All of which Mr. Arjun has spoken till now are very wonderful tips, and more of it can be found in the Art of Concentration in the Age of Distractions book. Don't you agree, Arjun? Like, do you
Oh,
recommend the book?
yes, most definitely. I think I can say no more and no less rather than that this book is a one stop solution. And simply because it's very practical, very relatable, very simple, yet it encourages everyone to pursue a larger than life goal. And I found a combination of all these points very, very inspiring when I read the AOC book, and I felt that, all the mistakes that I had made all along almost flashed past my eyes in a minute. And not just that, every mistake that I had made had a perfectly valid and tested out solution which is mentioned in the book. And I said that, and like, the video mentions, it's definitely a game changer in your preparation, simply because um, it helps you find your mistakes much faster than you might on your own. And most important thing which people get stuck on is, I have a problem but I do not know how to solve the problem. And it's often said that, we do not laugh at the same joke twice, but we worry about the same problem multiple times. And I think with AOC and the principles Jamal sir mentions and inspires the students to take up, with a lot of scientific examples as well from history, um, it's just a wonderful reading experience overall. And you will walk away from the book feeling enriched and motivated to pursue larger than life goals. And I think that has been the greatest thing I experienced by reading AOC. And that's why I would definitely recommend the book. The AOC book is relevant not only to students, but also to working professionals, simply because of the principles of time management and positivity and perseverance that it encourages through time tested, historically accurate, and scientifically motivated examples. And I think that, there can simply be no better way to educate oneself about the problems that one might face, as well as find quick, practically realizable, and realistically implementable solutions in this book in a very short time span. I read the book for just a day, and I could already feel very, very positive influences in my life. And when I finished the book in around 3 days, I felt a lot more motivated and energized to take on all the challenges that came up at work, because at that time I was probably going through a slightly difficult project. And like Abhishek, it came down from a 100-line solution to probably a 10-line solution. And I felt that there are so many beautiful quotes in the AOC book which are easy to remember, but actually have a profound and powerful, far
Mm.
reaching message. And I think that's why I would definitely recommend the AOC book to everybody.
Wow. Thank you so much, Arjun. So, dear viewers, as you have seen today, uh, like the tips Arjun has given us, and the way he quoted the Art of Concentration book, how it has helped in strengthening mentally and boosting various aspects of a student life, right? And let me tell you, you have any more comments or questions that we want to post to our future toppers to ask, please do put it in the comment section below. Also, let me tell you, there are wonderful discounts on the book Art of Concentration in the Age of Distractions, and the links, Amazon links to them, are posted below. Please do click on them and have a copy for yourself. And thank you, Mr. Arjun, for wonderfully explaining and narrating. It was so nice talking to you. It could go on for hours and hours together, but I think we will stop it here. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Abhishek, for being a wonderful host. And thank you to Amal sir and the Arjuna group and all the volunteers for having me today. It's been a wonderful experience. Thank you.
Okay, viewers, fine. We will meet in the next episode of Success Tips from Topper Slips. Thank you.